Hi everybody. It's really cold out. Actually, it's not that bad in here. I've been kind of running the car for the last hour because my battery is running low because my car is pretty old, and right now I just can't afford too much in the way of car repairs. So she balks a little bit sometimes, especially when it's cold out. And tonight I went to the store and it started, and then I went and got gas. Oh, and then there was this person pulled up behind me in the gas line who clearly wanted to get in. Why did my mouth look purple? Hang on a sec. Sorry about that. Must just be the light. So this person is she's pulled up behind me and just looks completely like they wanted to get out of there. And I'm sure I heard a beep. And then, so after I finished getting gas, oh, my car is not starting. So I had to get out, hook up my little power pack booster, give myself a boost. And not one person stopped to even ask if I was doing okay. Like, what jerks people have become. I don't know what is wrong with this world. But who knows? 2025 is going to be an interesting time, I think. Anyway, so that was my little adventure tonight. So I have a couple of updates. I started one of those Ko-Fi coffee, whatever. I look at it and I see Ko-Fi because it reminds me of lo-fi, but Ko-Fi. So I don't know if it's Ko-Fi or coffee, but that page is set up now. And I have t-shirts and mugs and things for sale. I also have a Not My President. So if anybody wants to help us out, head over. You can have a look at the designs if you see if you like anything. And I also have for sale a reading journal, which it's $3 on the Ko-Fi site. You can download one and help me out. Now I had this argument with my sister. Leave a comment down below if you think this is true or if this is bunk. But she says that nobody keeps track of the stuff that they read. That's something that you do when you're 12 to show the teacher that you did your reading, which I think is not fair. I've been keeping a reading journal since 2021. And of course, nothing will match the gluey charm of my sticker-covered list of books, but that doesn't mean that, I can't have a nice reading journal at some point. But anyway, let me know if and just head over to the Ko-Fi site. I'll leave the link in the doobly-doo. So today I'm going to review Deceptive Calm, and I've completely forgotten the author's name. I apologize. It's Patricia something. Anyway, I had mentioned that I was reading it because I downloaded it back in October. It's just taken me this long to finish it. And full disclosure, I started reading it through the online book club, which there is a program where they're supposed to pay you for an honest review. It's not a lot of money. It's like anywhere from $5 to I think the most is about $30. But you can go and sign up and they'll send you the list of books that are available to read and the cost. And so it's you're not going to get rich or anything, but you might be able to buy yourself a coffee. So I picked up this one and I bought it in October, and I was kind of slowly getting through it. Finally finished it, wrote the review, but they told me there were problems with it, so I have no idea if I'm going to get paid or not. I don't know. I got to go back and fix the problems. So I'm going to just give my video review here and take my chances. Anyway, so this book is about a young woman named Vanessa. She was orphaned when she was very small. She's grown up in an orphanage. And the woman that raises her at the orphanage is a nun by the name of Sister Rowe. I think her full name's Rosemary or something like that. And she is in the community is predominantly white, but the neighborhood is predominantly black, which happened a lot in the South in the early 60s. And it's 1968. It's just before Reverend King is murdered. And the first scene, a bus full of these kids from the Catholic high school gets attacked by the racists, and they want to attack the black kid on the bus. but you know, the kids end up getting out of it and driving this trashed bus to the hospital where Trish, one of the main characters of the book, has to undergo surgery, and she ends up in a coma for a while and whatever. It's like a whole thing. And then we spend some time with Vanessa, and she starts dating Barry, whose dad is the only black surgeon, or he works, I guess there's a black hospital. It's a, you know, the staff is black, it's in the black community and so on. And the closest hospital that they get to is this one, and they don't want him to operate on the white girl. But he's like, if she moves, she's gonna die. So they allow her to stay, right? So, and I guess it really was that bad back then. But eventually they pull out of it, and Vanessa and Barry go to the prom together. And Barry goes off to school, and Vanessa lives her life. A couple years later, about 2 years later, she graduates high school. She gets a scholarship to the North Carolina University. While she's in university, she and her friend Trish figure out that death certificates are public record. So they go and they figure out, you know, you can fake ID, and you can be anybody you want. You know, just find an ID, somebody with the same birth year, that died as an infant, and you know, you can take their name. So Vanessa takes the name of a little child that passed away really young, and they tuck it away. And then she gets to her third year of university, and she decides she's had enough, and she buggers off to the West Coast and she starts living her life as a white woman. Now, the one thing that is kind of strange to me is that she's a very, very light-skinned woman, and none of the black families want to adopt her. Now, I don't know anything about these things at all, but I read Nichelle Nichols' autobiography, Beyond Uhura, which is a great book, by the way. And she said that her dad was a member of what they call the Blue Vein Club, which means that he was light-skinned enough that you could see, you know, the veins underneath the skin. And at that time, and in that place, in the American South, light-skinned black people had a certain measure of privilege. They were more likely to be able to do business with the white community. They were more likely to be hired, you know, by white managers and so on. So it doesn't quite ring true to me that that a black family would not have wanted to adopt Vanessa. Whatever, I don't know. But again, it's one of those things like, why didn't Hamlet kill the king when he had the chance? Well, there wouldn't have been a story, right? So you just kind of accept that part of it and move on. And I'm sure there are lots and lots of communities that don't want a white passing child. So she leaves for the West Coast, but she still stays in touch with Trish. And they're, you know, they're best friends for the whole lives. And Barry turns out to be a bit of a turd, so they break up. And Vanessa goes to the West Coast. Trisha goes to Boston, Washington, somewhere in there, and she becomes very successful in the sales end of journalism. And Vanessa becomes very successful as a journalist, and eventually becomes an anchor woman. And she, you know, these are traditionally considered male roles. And in the 70s, you know, they fight, they really, really fight for their success, but they are successful. And it's really, you know, this kind of triumphant thing. So then the last third of the book turns into this big soap opera. It's awesome. So Vanessa's success draws the eye of this rich guy. And he is your typical rich bro, asshole, philandering, abusive jerk. But with an extra wrinkle, because she has a kid, the kid ends up getting sickle cell anemia, which predominantly affects the African American community. And he figures out that she's black, and everything just turns to shit. So it becomes this whole soap opera. And I won't, yeah, I mean, obviously I've given a lot of spoilers about the story, but The last third is so much more fun than the first 2/3 of the book. The first 2/3 of the book are a little bit of a slog, but then all of a sudden it just goes, just completely takes a turn, and the plot and the pace get much faster and more, a little bit trashy, but much more easy to absorb and read. So I give it about a 3.5 out of 5. My main quibbles are, first of all, the pacing of the first parts of the book is kind of a slog to get through. The second thing that is irksome about the book is that Sister Row is a historian, especially of local history and history of the South. So there's lots and lots and lots of little factual tidbits throughout the book, which, you know, it's interesting enough, but it does get a little bit tedious as far as the character interactions, because most characters don't give you a travelogue, you know, when you ask them a question. And it's one thing when it's Sister Row, because that's kind of her character, but it's another thing when the other characters are talking back and forth. And the what's the word I'm looking for? The exposition is really awkward when it comes out through character dialogue. So there's another scene that happens. Character goes septic, and the doctor explains what septicemia is. And it's like, well, this character has septicemia, and it's treated this way, and these are the symptoms. And it reads like a Wikipedia or WebMD entry. It really does. It's not the way that normal people talk, even about very factual, very in-depth kind of bits of information. I mean, in real life, it would be septicemia. Well, what's that? Well, it's a condition where blah, blah, blah. Is she going to be okay? She's going to be fine, but we've got her on some antibiotics, blah, blah, blah. You know, it would be a back and forth. And a lot of the dialogue is very awkward and not the way that people talk. So there's a stiffness and an unnatural feeling to a lot of the interactions. So that kind of pulls me out of the story. That's a big quibble. And then the other quibble is that I'm not a big fan of, you know, issue stories. And this book tried to kind of cram all of the issues. So you've got the race issue, you've got the, you know, feminist women weren't allowed to do this, and this, so these women have to overcome this to become successful. You've got another character that has an illegal abortion in it's like 1970 or something, so pre Roe v. Wade, and it's horrific. And of course, you know, you come so far, and yet you have to go all the way back to square one. Fuck you, America. And then you've got, you know, all of the basic issues that get sort of touched on but not really resolved or come back to. And any one of those could be a story in their own, but when you try to cram them all into one novel, it just kind of feels like a mess. So that was, but it has a pretty satisfying ending. The last third, like I said, just does an about face and becomes something completely different than the first 2/3. And that was the other kind of eyebrow raising thing that I had. The book doesn't know what it wants to be, what kind of story it wants to be. So is it a historical novel that looks at issues? Is it a literary novel where you kind of have one character and you look at all these things? Is it chick lit, which we do get a sense of? The friendship between Vanessa and Trish is wonderful. So there's a lot of back and forth, engaging chit chat, and also the scenes with Sister Row. So when you have the women in their respective relationships, there's a warmth there, and it's snappy, it's funny. So that kind of has this chick lit quality to it, and also women's issues. And then you've got the soap opera at the end. I mean, there's no other way to discuss it. So a Sidney Sheldon or a Jackie Collins would know what to do with a story like that. When you try to cram in all these different kind of tropes and genres, it just turns into a mess. And I always try to look at, you know, what I would tell the author if I were their editor. And that's what it would be. It would be, start it when the girl's in college. That's really where the story starts. Any of the background information you can probably deal with in about a chapter. The Barry character, in all honesty, get him out of there. I mean, she can be cheated on. She can do this and that with any other man that she's with. And the fact that he sort of shows up at the end, you could have had a different character doing that and it would have been the same result, because we don't really have much of a relationship with Barry. Or, I mean, as nice as his family is and everything, yeah, you can just scrap all of that. Yeah. So if it were about 50 pages or so shorter, it probably would have been a much better book. Other than that, it's got good points and bad points. It's kind of a mixed bag. I'm going to leave it at that. I give it about a 3.5 stars. So I'm working on reading still the Cost of Living anthology. Excuse me. And also, I started the audiobook of Strangers on a Train by Patricia Highsmith. It was on sale over at Chirp, so of course I had to grab it. I've got a few other books. I think one thing I kind of would like to try for 2025. I was watching Wrath James White on his TikTok, and he says, read books by diverse authors. And I thought, yeah, I think I'm going to try to do that this year. I've got a few books by white men that are on my to-read list that I expect to get through at some point. But I would also, even if it's, you know, for every book by a white dude, I read a book by a more diverse author. So I'm going to try to focus on stories by women and by people of color, both men and women of color, and by gay and trans authors. So we'll see how that goes, and wish me luck on my journey there. And one more time, I do have the Ko-Fi set up. I've got merch. If you go to that site, if you're interested in, you know, mugs and stickers and t-shirts and so on, and also the reading journal. And let me know, do you keep a reading journal? And if you do, if you'd like a new one, they're $3 over on my site. So that's it from me. I hope you're having a wonderful, wonderful new year. And oh yeah, Neil Gaiman. We always knew he was a turd, but we didn't know quite how bad. Oh my goodness. And by the way, Amanda Palmer can also fuck off into the sun. So that's all I'm going to say about that for now. I don't know if I want to do another author's behaving badly, but there's an absolutely horrific article over on Vulture. Real life horror stories. So that's it for me. I hope you are having a wonderful new year. Hope you're reading lots of great horror. Have a great day.